How's it going, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Okay, so Theodor Adorno was a German philosopher and one of the foremost continental thinkers of the 20th century. He was one of the leading members of the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory. He died in 1969. Okay, so I should say at the outset that I don't think that Adorno ever really wrote anything like a systematic treatise or full-blown defense of animal rights. But that said, his broader philosophical framework, especially his critique of the Enlightenment rationality and domination, definitely lays a powerful groundwork for thinking ethically about animals. So in his seminal work, Dialectic of Enlightenment, what Adorno does is he critiques how Enlightenment reason, in seeking to dominate nature, ends up dehumanizing both humans and non-human animals. Very generally, what Adorno argues is that the Enlightenment fundamentally changed the way that we humans related to nature. What happened is that in their mission to control and to disenchant nature with science, the thinkers of the Enlightenment adopted a reductive and a quantitative and an instrumentalizing outlook towards the natural world. And so what happened was the belief that nature is sacred or somehow intrinsically valuable got replaced by a conception of nature as meaningless matter. From that point forward, the natural world was just viewed as a tool for humans to employ in their own interests. Well, this logic of domination, of course, extended to animals too, which is to say they too got reduced to mere objects or resources to be used and disposed of as seen fit. And that's what Adorno points out, that animals, due to both Enlightenment rationality and industrial capitalism, are now pretty much seen only as mere raw material, products, and food. Actually, one of Adorno's most powerful statements on animals comes from another work of his, from a lecture that he gave, in fact. This is what he says there. He says, "The most radical injustice that can be imagined is the complete degradation of a creature to the status of a mere thing." Now, it's true that this statement doesn't really name animals explicitly, but it's certainly consistent with the way animals are routinely treated in modern systems of production. To turn a pig into a packaged product or a chicken into a number is simply to devalue or to degrade a sentient being into a mere thing to be exploited for our use or pleasure. Exactly what Adorno condemns. This is a world where life has lost its intrinsic value. By the way, Adorno wasn't the only philosopher of this period to frame the problem like this. Another German philosopher, Heidegger, argues for something sort of similar. Now, I don't think that he defends animals per se, but he argues that our technological and our capitalistic mindset today flattens all beings into resources and into objects of consumption, and that would include animals. In fact, he might say that this mindset is so ubiquitous today that we've actually completely forgotten how to see an animal for what it really is, for the being that it is in itself. Okay, but back to Adorno. So for Adorno, a major consequence of this logic of domination, and with it the failure to recognize the intrinsic worth of a sentient being, a consequence of this is that we become completely insensitive or indifferent to animal suffering. We normalize it or we ignore it. But this just opens the door to all kinds of unpardonable cruelty. Our callousness and our lack of empathy permits the abominable practice of factory farming, for example. For Adorno, true ethics begins with attentiveness to suffering, especially the kind of suffering society hides or makes sure that we ignore. But you know, Adorno's not the only philosopher to remind us of animal suffering. Peter Singer, the founder of modern animal liberation philosophy, also takes suffering as completely paramount, although he takes a different philosophical approach. What he does is he argues from a utilitarian perspective. So what matters ethically for him is not what species a being belongs to, but whether or not that being can suffer. So the idea is really simple, actually. If animals are sentient, and if they can suffer, and if our actions cause them unnecessary suffering, then those actions are going to be wrong, period. Obviously, then, the implication here is going to be that things like factory farming and animal testing and any system that causes harm without overwhelming justification should be absolutely avoided. But again, the central point here is that for Singer, the moral boundary isn't intelligence or self-awareness. No, it's sentience. In this way, his argument is pretty refreshing and simple. Suffering is suffering, and our ethical concern should extend to any creature who experiences it. We should therefore do what we can to stop ignoring the real, measurable suffering that we cause. But Adorno and Singer aside, you know, all this raises a larger issue, at least for me personally. And it's something that I alluded to already. Namely, we've gotten used to the exploitation and the suffering of animals. And so our conscience has become numb. Not because we're stupid or anything, but because our sensitivity has become dulled. You know, here I'm reminded of the missionary physician, Albert Schweitzer, and especially of his little book called The Reverence for Life. You see, Schweitzer criticized ethical systems that function only on rules but lack emotional depth. He believed that genuine morality starts with our feelings, with our instinctive and emotional connection to the life around us. When we rely too much on theory and not enough on empathy, we lose touch with what morality is really about. Namely, a living response to the life that's all around us. We have to pay attention to this. We have to practice mindfulness toward the life that's around us. If we don't, our feelings are going to get dulled by distraction and by routine, and most of all, by convenience. We start making decisions that harm life without even realizing it. So part of Schweitzer's mission was to try to reawaken this buried sensitivity that we all have in us. You know, the kind that we had in us as kids when we cried at seeing an injured bird or at a deer that had been shot. Schweitzer really believed it was possible for us to relearn how to feel again, how to see life clearly and respond to it with care. This reawakening was for him the heart of ethics. Well, I'm with him here. Let's try our best to resist this numbing. Let's not let what we know are the best of our feelings get blunted. Let's notice the animals. Bye for now.